got fiber now.
We've got cameras in his house.
Now, if I come late for Wednesday, then I'm like, it's fine.
No point on this.
You need a bicycle.
Right. Okay, so we're going to continue our discussion on millennial reign, right? So what we did is we looked at scriptures and we see many of them now they're not being fulfilled, and then tonight we're going to look at New Covenant scriptures, and then I wanted to go on to other scriptures that kind of made the illusion of covenant of peace. It's called the covenant of peace. So this is going to give you a little bit of a head start for Sunday stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, obviously these things, as we will see, have started but are not yet in its fullness. So again, will only come in probably millennial or thereafter millennial. Okay, so basically the whole thing is just to kind of show you where things have been spoken about and how the fullness of them are going to come in only once he's reigning with us, and only after 1,000 years in many cases will these things be in its completion, in the fullness of what we're looking at. So yeah, you keep right.
Yes, boss.
You keep right. New covenant or renewed covenant scriptures. Where do I find them?
Ezekiel 37:14. Well,
No, not 37.
Sorry, 36 to 38, and then I had Isaiah 54. Jeremiah 31, and then
Ezekiel 37 and Isaiah 54 is covenant and peace scriptures, not new covenant.
Oh, okay. Sorry. My bad.
Okay, new covenant scriptures. Jeremiah 31, Ezekiel 36. Right. So when people start looking at the discussions, and then they say, you all probably met one of these, we're new covenant believers. First thing we normally try to do is highlight the fact that new covenant is not Hebrews 8. It is the remez that links them from Hebrews to Jeremiah and Ezekiel. If that is the case, and we know that most people understand it, the Bible divide of we have Old Testament and New Testament, they see Old Covenant, New Covenant. Okay? That's what it is. Right? It's a really silly divide. But they see the fullness of that coming in. Now, if you're New Covenant and you're still, let me just give you the logic of this for a second. You're a New Covenant believer, but you're quoting from the Old Covenant to establish that. First problem. Because the Old Covenant, according to a New Covenant believer nowadays, means that the Old Covenant has fallen away. You with me? So how then can you make it reliable if you say it's done away with?
Ja, there's an Afrikaans guy from Westdal. He did a teaching just last week on the same thing, saying, how can you call it a new covenant? And everything we've got there is based on Old Covenant reading.
Right, well you have to go into the Old Covenant to understand this. Okay, so just to kind of give us a little bit of context. Where was, if we say, and the classical argument is this, Old Covenant was broken, where? Which Old Covenant are we talking about? Mount Sinai? Okay, Sinai, right, because you have to specify. Because as you see on Sunday, we've got Abraham's, Isaac, Jacob, Noah's. Which covenant are you talking about? Okay, they just said the old one. Which one? Scripture points to the Sinai, right? And we say, okay, if that one was broken, or if that was established by God, when was the first time it was broken?
Before Moses came down.
Also at Sinai, right? Golden calf moment. He takes the stone tablets, he throws them down, they're broken. Covenant's broken. You and I enter into a contract. Take the contract. I tear it up in front of you. Is that contract binding? Right? That's it. Done. Thanks very much. Before we even get started, you've nullified yourself. You told me that you weren't serious, and that's the end of it. God does something strange though. He deals with those who don't want to be part of them, and then he does what?
It's a new one.
Moses goes up, reinstitutes it, this time he has to cut out the stones, Ruach HaKodesh, Kapis, the same thing over again. And those are the ones we can take down and put in the ark. Covenant doesn't change. Stipulations don't change. Same God. Same invitation. If you do what I ask you to, then you become a peculiar treasure. Right? So if God doesn't change, These things were set in stone. The problem is, the stony part we understood. It's unchanging. But you all took that to stony part here instead of I won't be changing. Okay, so there has to be a heart condition that changes with this. Do I want to become a peculiar treasure or do I want to live for me? And this is what we're going to be looking at. There is a heart change that happens with this new covenant understanding that gets instituted with the Ruach HaKodesh and Messiah that is going to bring us further into this millennial reign understanding. Okay, so Jeremiah 31 verse. Okay, you guys can carry on now. You're all allowed to talk again.
Well, 30.
31.
It's only 31.
Okay. So, around 31:30, 31:31, depending on your Bible translation. Okay. It starts with the phrase, here the days are coming. Okay, we're all there? Jeremiah? Yeah, behold the days. Jeremiah 31:31. Okay. Are you guys confused?
Yes,
You're confused?
of course.
It's been a very long time.
Okay. Basically, I'm discussing the 1,000-year reign.
Yes, so just the scripture that we put that. Yeah.
Okay, and then what are you confused about?
Are we still...
He's confused about which scripture you reading from.
Jeremiah
Have you
31.
finished Revelations?
No.
Yeah.
Revelations 20, 21. 19, 20, 21 is basically where we're at. We've finished Revelations 19 and 20. We're going into 21. But 20 and 21 actually talk about millennial reign. So now we've gone back and we've looked at other scriptures that also give us, because it's hinted to all over the place. Zechariah 14, Isaiah talks about it, Ezekiel talks about it, and there's a whole bunch of places that are going to give us a clearer picture of what's already hinted in Revelations.
Okay.
Remember, because Revelation is the end of the book and you're all Jewish, you all understand what happened all along there. So now I bring you and I say, remember millennial reign? Or the time when everybody will come up and then we can go, that sounds like Zechariah, that sounds like Ezekiel, that sounds like Isaiah, that sounds like, right? Those are those pictures that you now already have and you're just putting it into this block. Okay. Alright, so 31:30. Here the days are coming, says Adonai, where I will make a new covenant or renewed covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Stop. Right. Stick your finger here. Go back to Exodus 19:20. 10 points for the person who can give me the stipulation. Who was the Sinai covenant with?
Israel and the house of Jacob.
Are you sure?
And
Give me the scripture. No. Scripture reference. Two specific groups of people. He mentions it.
Yeah, that's the Jacob and the children of Israel.
Okay, what verse do you have there?
I have verse 3.
Chapter?
Exodus 19 verse 3.
Exodus 19 verse 3 says the first covenant is made up with who?
The house of Jacob and the house of the children of Israel.
Jacob and Israel.
If you then it skips, verse 4 says, you have seen what I did to the Mitzrites, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. And now, if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the people.
That's fine. Right. So basically he comes up and he goes, alright, this is a stipulation for the Sinai covenant. Okay. And we know there's a mixed multitude there because it already records a mixed multitude going up with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it also talks about them all camping around, and he says the foreigner who chooses to stay with you, the people who want to offer up the Pesach land, etc., etc. He doesn't make a distinction between Jacob, Israel, and the other nations that are camped around you. That's important. He gives one Torah, one instruction for one nation. Now this is where we need to be careful, okay? Because we have different views of this. If we look at Jacob, who was Jacob? Short answer.
The son of Abraham.
Son of Abraham, father of the 12 tribes. Okay? Right. Okay? From the literal seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Israel, who's Israel?
Jacob after he wrestled with God.
Spiritual sense.
Ah. Also the father of the 12 tribes, same guy. So, God says, I'm going to make a covenant with you, O Jacob and Israel. Thanks for reiterating the same thing twice.
Personality, man.
Now, you have something in Hebrew where they reiterate it twice, but they use the same word. If I want to say something's tasty, I say ta'im, me'od. If I want to say it's really tasty, I say ta'im, me'od, me'od. Very, very.
It's like emphasizing.
Yes. And he will at times say, awake, awake. Okay? And he's repeating it twice because he wants to create emphasis. This is not one of those times because he uses two different titles.
Is that where, the King James would say, where Yeshua would say, verily, verily, I say unto you, so that would be the same type of connotation.
Yes.
Why the King James is translated it like that.
Pay attention, I'm saying something very, very important. Okay? So where the Hebrew grammar works, right?
I found the verse where it says about the sojourners, and it's in Deuteronomy 29, verse 10 to 11.
Deuteronomy 10, right? 29 verse 10.
29, verse 10 to 11. As I read it.
Okay, that's just what sojourner for you guys who can check out. So he goes up and he says to the household of Jacob, to the household of Israel, and he's got a mixed multitude there, and he gives one Lord, one nation. One Torah, one king, one nation. How do I define the nation? Whoever is God's and everybody else. Okay, makes sense. You belong to me. What about the rest of them? They haven't come into covenant with me yet. They don't understand who I am. They don't understand my point. They don't understand that I created everything. They don't understand that I've made covenants with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They don't understand where I've been throughout history. They don't understand Noah. They don't understand any of it. You are going to be my vehicle to go and do that and teach them that stuff. Right? But when we look at Yaakov, our clue to why he uses those specific names, you have to go back to the man. When Jacob was living for Jacob, he was called Jacob. And the rabbis will say that he was using because he was focused on self. Right? One of the biggest light bulb moments with this was when Jacob lost his favorite son. And Israel was doing this, and he mentions Israel and Jacob, interchangeably almost, but more Israel than Yaakov. And then all of a sudden, Yosef. Gone. And then all of a sudden you hear less Israel and more Jacob and Jacob and Jacob. And then all of a sudden he finds out that Joseph's alive. And then all of a sudden you hear less Jacob and more Israel.
He went through the motions.
He was angry with God.
Yeah.
He was angry. He was frustrated. You took away my favorite wife. You took away my favorite wife. You took away my favorite son. Why would I want a relationship with you? This is a man struggling with his own God. And Israel means wrestles with. Right? And he's wrestling with him and he's trying to understand him, but he's walking with him, but he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's holding his family back. Benjamin, my precious, no one going anywhere near you lot. You know, last time he went looking out for you, if you guys were just where you were and you were doing what you're supposed to do, then Joseph would have been here. But Joseph understood where he was. He understood that God lifted him up at a time. You meant it for evil, and God has meant it for my good. And he provides food for them, and he becomes a Messiah type for the 12 tribes. But in the same point, when it says here, this was the biggest thing with me, is that if you look for it nicely, it says, just after he finds out Joseph's alive, he says, and Israel went up to make a sacrifice. All of a sudden, you don't hear about him making offerings. You don't hear about him worshiping God. He finds out Joseph's alive. It's the first thing he does. Yeah, I've been angry with you the whole time. I've been so mad. I've been so frustrated. I thought you left me. I thought you just were just all over. But actually, isn't that an amazing thing? Sometimes you would think God is against you in many of the situations you find yourself in. Remember, He's working out everybody's good, not just yours. Can you imagine? He knew how this would break Jacob's heart. He knew it. But he said, I'm going to let him go through this anyway, because if I don't, they're going to die. And I need to work through Joseph next. So I'm going to be teaching him while I'm going to be testing him, I'm going to be building them up, and by the time I'm done, they are not going to even have an inkling of all the beauty that I've prepared for them. It was a salvation plan. Was it difficult? Absolutely. But the end goal was life. Okay. So, for me,
That sounds like road to Emmaus, the guys who were walking all down mountains, they didn't realize that Jesus was right there with it.
yeah, Joseph in full array. Egyptian. Anyway, so we come back to it. So if we make the illusion and we understand that Romans talks about the house of Israel and how we're grafted in, and it's a wild olive branch and the cultivated one, right? We start to understand that there is a different connotation to this one. If this one is physical, then this one is the spiritual house. Now, that does not mean that when I talk about the nation of Israel, I'm always talking about the spiritual nation of Israel. There is the physical land of Israel, there are 12 tribes of Israel, and throughout Scripture you need to make the distinction between what are we talking about. You grafted into the house of Israel, does that mean I'm grafted into the land? Maybe later, but spiritually, no. Okay? And you are going to get literalists out there that says, it says Israel, it can mean nothing to anybody else. But if I can't get grafted into that, then without becoming Jewish first, and then that's where that starts to fall. There is this picture of my house, and he sees two distinct trees. The physical seed, of which he promised, this is what I'm going to be doing through, and this spiritual house, which is supposed to be, but unfortunately, sometimes Jacob will be Jacob, sometimes they're going to wrestle with me, and then sometimes they'll be Yeshua, the complete perfection of what Israel should be. Okay? You're with me?
Yeah.
Right. So, let's look at Jeremiah 31. Okay? The new covenant is with who?
Israel and Judah.
Okay. So we have Israel again, and we have Judah.
There's no house of Gentiles.
There is no house of Gentiles there. New covenant believer is sorry, no.
So if someone actually comes to you and says, no, it doesn't mean that, then you go to Jeremiah 31. It's okay, so then obviously this new covenant is not for us.
Yeah, you still got the
But then how does that distribute
No,
Isaiah
we don't know what
58?
covenant either because we're not Jewish.
They don't even know it because Isaiah 58, remember, you're having a discussion with a church person who doesn't want to acknowledge the fact that there's rulings and instructions that you've got to follow. New covenant means everything of the old is gone. Isaiah 58 talks about Sabbath and why we should keep it, because you're going to be lifted up to the mountain. That's for you, because you're in covenant. Right? But now you're sitting there in this position, no Gentiles, no Gentiles. So my first question is, generally, which covenant can you cling to? The only one you have is Noah's covenant. Because he made that with the entire creation. So right, your new banner is rainbows. In this day and age, it means something completely different. Wave that flag too high. Don't go to Cape Town or Tel Aviv and wave that flag. You're going to attract a whole different type of people. But we're sitting in a situation, well, if Noah is the only covenant I have, then you don't have any inheritance through Messiah, because he came from the house of Jacob. He was part of the sons of Judah. He was a literal Jew. He establishes God's house, which is the nation of Israel. Who are you? You don't have claim to this covenant unless you get grafted in. And how are we grafted in? Only if this gives me a spiritual household identity. It's the only way through Yeshua. Now, who's going to establish it? Funny enough, it wasn't Jacob who was going to establish it of the tribes. Of all the tribes, it was Judah who was going to help with this covenant and this establishment. If this is talking about physical, and this is interesting, we've got two applications. One, through the physical seed of Judah, which we know David, Mashiach, Messiah came from. But also, today, what are people, sons of Jacob, called? What do you call them?
Jewish.
Jews. And why do they call themselves Jews?
Judah.
Judah, the tribe?
The southern kingdom.
From the Judean Mountains.
From the mountains, the Judean mountains. They identify themselves from the land they came from. They come because of the Judean mountains.
So that's how they can call a Benjamin after Jew.
They look at this land which God had given us as an inheritance and they say, this is who we are in the territory of Judah. Who is going to establish that? Who gave them back their land? It was Mashiach. God has got a kingdom, He's got a plan. He gave them, the nation, back their land. Listen, you're going to have a lot of people talk about replacement theology. We are the new Israel.
Where did you get from?
My first question then is, why did God give them their land back in 1948? If He was done with the Jews, why did He give them back their land?
Why did Yeshua come as a Jew?
No, well, that's He came to uphold them in that, but afterwards, obviously. They spurned the Messiah, so therefore they broke covenant completely.
All His disciples are Jewish, and He said to them, go forth and make disciples.
We have to negate, no, but they became Christians.
They're still Jewish.
Shaul, no, they left that Jewish thing. If you don't understand those scriptures, if you don't understand that Shaul
Was a Jew.
was Jewish and he was a rabbi, and that when he became a Christian, he didn't convert to Paul. He was always Paul in Roman circles, and he was always Shaul in Hebrew circles. When he was traveling in a Roman world, they called him Paul. Okay, you have two names. It is not difficult here. Alright, if I'm running around just terrorizing C for a second, he's like, hey, my name's C. But when he goes home, it's a We have guys that work and then you come over there and you go, what's your name? Praise. Look at the ID book. Do my son. Why do I that? Do me? Why must I call you praise? No, it means praise. Okay. So what do you prefer? Well, some people call me praise, some people call me doing something. Right? If that's your birth, I'm going to call you doing. And so we go on. Okay? So it's a simple enough understanding for us, but then when you go to America, it's a completely different story. Right? Bob is Bob. Alright. So they come from that, and that's sort of the physical versus the spiritual. So we see at least a continuation, at least from the understanding of the writers, that this covenant from Sinai is not made up with different compartments. This is a continuation of the same thing. What I did for you at Sinai, I'm going to do something else here. If that said Benjamin and Judah, we've got a problem. We've got no commonality. Okay? But because Israel is our commonality, the spiritual house, which had a mixed multitude, and which has a mixed multitude, all becoming part of God's commonwealth, and the strength of that kingdom, spiritually speaking, comes from another covenant, covenant of David, or the blessing of Judah, which is again leading us to this Messianic kingdom, otherwise known as the kingdom of heaven, which is then again going to come into a millennial reign scenario. When he comes and establishes himself, the lion from the tribe of Judah is going to reign in Jerusalem, which is in the territory of Judah. Are you guys with me? Okay, I'm reiterating this. I need you guys to catch that basis, because everything else makes sense once you understand these things are just overlapping, they're not superseding. Okay.
It also makes sense, we made that live now, a kingdom of priests, because we're under the kingship of a king. But it came because, it's part of the covenant.
Yes. Again, a kingdom of priests is, again, Leviticus was not written at Sinai. A royal priesthood is again coming from through Yeshua, but an Egyptian identity. Yeah, an Egyptian idea of a priest was anybody who reflected their God. If I wanted to understand what their God was like, I would look to the person. He is holy, holy, holy. What are you commanded to be? The Levites get the instruction, be holy for I am holy.
Mhm.
You reflect me, get it right. And if you who reflect Mashiach and the kingdom of heaven, how much more so? You have an advantage that most people don't. There are so many incitements against the people who desecrate the holy and don't teach the difference between the clean and the unclean. That's a Levitical incitement. He says, listen guys, if you don't even understand what I like and what I don't like, what I consider bad and what I consider good, how is anybody supposed to understand who he is? Let me give you one example that got a very strong prophet in trouble. We all know the story with Moses and him striking the rock the second time. First time he struck the rock, God was shocked. Second time, I told you to talk to the rock. We go, oh no, it was because he was angry because he didn't do it and the miracle was still on. No. Two things happened. He came in and he said, shall we bring forth water? Him and Aaron all of a sudden went same level as God. Two more steps, they're going to be worshipping Aaron and Moses instead of worshipping God. Do you want to play that game on whose throne are we sitting in?
God was merciful, they didn't strike him down there.
Second thing is, God told them in another thing, and listen to the story carefully, God was not frustrated or angry. But Moses was. If you were supposed to be the representative of God, and you show me that God's angry because I asked for water, if that's the type of tyrannical God I serve, shouldn't we take a step back and just think for a second? Moses was angry with us because we needed water. No, Moses was frustrated because you guys whined and you grumbled and you pushed him to a point where he couldn't handle it anymore. And he went to God and God gave him an answer, and in that same heart he came back and he's like, you guys are driving me crazy. Bah, bah. And then all of a sudden, not only are you taking God's throne, but also you're giving him a false representation of who he is. The closer you are, the bigger this man. If you have a calling on your life, understand, you reflect him to a people that don't understand him. Moses had, God said to him, I speak to Moses face to face. He saw him, he started glowing. Misrepresentation of that. If Moses gets it wrong, misrepresentation, then we all have a misrepresentation of God. God's really loving when you ask him for manna, but just don't ask him for water. He gets really cranky. Problem. Okay, you with me? All right. So we have this correlation. Israel and Israel is the only commonality we have here. All right. Okay. Verse 31. It will not be like the covenant I made with their fathers on the day I took them by their hand and brought them out of the land of Egypt. Because they for their part violated my covenant, even though for my part I was a husband to them. Really nice pointer at what Sinai was. The Ketubah. The Sukkot, the tabernacle was already tent. It was a home for us to dwell together. Okay. It says Adonai, for this is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Adonai. I will put my law or Torah within them and write it on their hearts. Okay. Where was the first Torah written?
On stone tablets.
Okay, so we got the Decalogue on stone tablets, and then we got books as we went on later that were later stored, but it was external. Now, with this renewed covenant, he says, I'm going to do it internal. Now, church folk be like, I don't want it written in the Bible, I want it written on my heart. But if it's on your heart to do something, you do it. That doesn't mean it's on my heart, I ignore it.
It's part of it.
It is. It's written on the flesh, not on the external anymore. How many of you have gotten something I like terrorizing boy again? When you drive and you see the 120 sign, Okay, I know South African mentality is pretty bad, but that's the least amount you drive. Yeah, nothing less than 120.
That's minimum speed.
Minimum speed, right? Until God goes, you're driving recklessly. If you do not look behind you for a second and realize what you have in your car. You've got your wife, which I gave you. You've got your children, which I gave you. Do you think you should be playing with their lives because you're impatient? 100. You know, I laugh when you... Yeah, I giggle at the stories when first-time daddies get their babies and then they put them in the car for the first time. And then you ask, I drove, so it was the longest drive. It took us forever to get home. I'm like, why? Traffic? No, 20 k's an hour, man.
You can't stop. You're 100 meters away, move further back.
Yeah, exactly. You have barriers in places that barriers you were not concerned with.
Yeah.
Driving there, you were fine, but now you've got precious cargo. Now you've got this little thing that squeaks and you don't know what's going to come out if you need a speed bump. Right? And I had a friend of mine drove from Millennial to it was Bass Park, Atlas side. I'd say it took him 45 minutes. He would not climb on the highway, he wouldn't climb on the main road, he drove backwards the entire way and he gave himself 100 meters space in between him and every car. No one's going to come near my baby. That conviction becomes a lot stronger. All of a sudden, once I have that precious cargo and I understand that, then it might be written on my heart. So now when I see a sign, I know that's a fence that's trying to protect me. But before, I'll do 120 if I know there are cops ahead. And as soon as we go past them, then we can maybe accelerate. But if that thing's there, it's supposed to be protecting you, keep my Sabbath. Do I push the limit of Shabbat? While I think he's watching, but when he's not watching, do I break free? Well, that's the thing. And again, maybe it's just me, but I've been in too many counseling sessions to realize that this realization is not just a once-off thing. We were doing X, Y, and Z, but out of respect for you, we didn't want to tell you or do it in front of you. But God said you don't do that. Yeah, but it is what it is. Out of respect for me, you won't do it in front of me. But out of respect for God, when He's standing in the room with you, you've got no problem. Somewhere in between the scenario, you've put me in the place of Him. You worry about more my opinion than you worry about His. I'm disappointed. I'm frustrated. I'm hurting. I don't even want to know how He feels when He's watching you do it and you're saying, just as long as Vince doesn't find out. And I scratch my head and I go, well, am I the keeper of Shabbat? Or are you doing this because you're supposed to be in covenant with your God? Why are you even pushing that limit? What are you even trying to do? Are you going to see how far you can go to break your salvation? This is part of the school of thought. It says it clearly in Ephesians 5. People that are sexually immoral, sexually greedy and full of lust and pride and arrogance, all those nice things. It's a lovely portion. Will have no share in the kingdom of heaven. Well, it's nice. It sounds to me like you're testing your salvation, actually. How far do you want to test it? Because you want to think you can outsmart God. It doesn't work. If it's written on your heart, you do it. That's not a get out of jail free card. I had another pastor say, you know what, the law is like the mommy who leaves a list of things on the fridge while she goes out, and daddy must take care of the kids, brush their teeth, feed them, do all the rest of it. And then when mommy comes home, all the chores the list gets thrown away. Now you can talk to mommy directly. You don't need the list. he was trying to explain away Torah. I was going to say, if your mommy was the same as my mommy, you better have your teeth brushed, otherwise she's going to get beaten. The law doesn't go away. The list is still there. But you know your mommy so well, you do it anyway.
Move from the
I've met
fridge
you,
to
Lou.
here because you know the lion is going to come if you. I mean, it's pretty simple.
It talks about the law. There's a word in the Greek called pegagos. It talks about him being the tutor, but the word tutor is a bad translation. It's the guy responsible to pick you up, to take you to the classroom and drop you off. And then he waits for you to finish your tutoring, and then he grabs you again and he'll take you to the next one. Guys, when you go through school and you learn and you grow and you learn and you grow and you go and you go to varsity and you learn and you grow and you study for your job, just because there's no more textbook doesn't mean you can forget about all the stuff you learned. The fact that God had to write it down for you tells me how the brave man is. Especially when you read half of the stuff. If you let you run after your own identity, there's going to be a whole bunch of broken left. Okay?
My thing is, did God make something that was not good?
Yeah, also true. Right. Yeah.
But I mean,
Romans
you
10
say
says so.
if God who's perfect made something that was defective, that was bad, then he's not perfect.
Yeah. Put you into bondage so that you can watch you fall. I'm going to give you something that you can't keep, and then I'm going to laugh and judge you accordingly. Okay, so, where are we at?
32.
Oh, we're getting really far. It will not be like the covenant I made with the fathers on the day I took them by the hand and brought them out from the land of Egypt, because they for their part violated my covenant, even though I was husband to them, says Adonai. For this is the covenant I will make with those house of Israel. Again, he doesn't say Judah after those days, just to reiterate. Says Adonai, I will put my Torah within them and write it on their hearts. I will be their God and they will be my people. When you do your covenant study, you will notice that that last section, I will be your God and they will be my people, is listed virtually with every covenant. Every major covenant. That is the point of it all. Circumcision, that's the point. That was the point that made me circumcise my newborn, only, or first child, at that point, my only child. At the 8 days old, I gave him some banana and I took him to a moil and I said, all right, you can now perform open surgery while someone holds his leg down. He does not understand what's going on. He did not know what was going on. He's 8 days old and he's getting surgery. And I was smiling.
Oh, that's cool. When you're 8 years old, you can nothing do about it. When you get to about 40, you go, I know exactly what's coming.
No, you don't. That's only till afterwards. But the point of that whole thing is that what is it that what is the best thing I can give my son?
Relationship with God.
Right, because I'm going to let him down, God never will. Right? And if he will be his because of this little act, then I'm done. That was me, case closed. I will give him that because that's what it hinges on.
That Psalm 27, which you're busy reading in the Alchet every morning, also says when your mother and father desert you, he does take you in.
Absolutely. Is there with you? So, no longer will any of them teach his fellow community member or his brother, know Adonai, for all will know me, from the least of them to the greatest, because I will forgive their wickedness and remember their sins no more. Okay, so two things we know this has to be millennial, is I can throw a brick and hit a heathen. Sadly, there are people out there that don't know him. To know him doesn't mean to know of him. In Hebrew it means to experience him. Have you experienced, do you have an active relationship with God? If not, you don't know him. You know of him. There's a difference. This is the same words they use where man and woman become one flesh and they know each other. This is not a, oh yeah, Steve, I think we went to school once scenario. Okay? This is an intimate relationship between two people that enter into a covenant. Alright? Nowhere else is this shared. This is that type of intimacy. Alright? And again it says,
about the new covenant, doesn't that merely mean guys who have walked into the new covenant?
sorry, say again?
But it's talking about the new covenant, doesn't that verse talk about guys who have actually been in the covenant? And they say all who know.
No, it says all will know.
Yeah, all who
But-
are part of the covenant.
No, we're all in the new covenant. But again, it's talking about everybody as well. You're talking about, he says, I will forgive their wickedness and remember their sins no more. So once they come into Yeshua, you're saying that you'll get that. But the problem is when you came into Yeshua, you didn't know anything about God really. You still had to study Torah. Right? You still had to go and ask the questions. My first question, okay, he's real, what does he want? I had no clue. So that knowledge is not instant.
Well, I know when I was doing things I was doing before, and all of a sudden I realized that it wasn't.
Yeah, but not
No,
everything.
nobody sat and taught me. I just knew something was wrong.
Yeah, but not all of it. If you take that God's standards are perfect, right? And if we take it from his, what is considered unclean, what is considered clean, and what is considered holy, you had no problem linking in eating prawns and having a burger shop. And then all of a sudden someone tells you, says quite clearly, that is not what we should do. If you didn't know any better, you would have gone to the altar with your little piggy and said, okay, here we go, I want to sacrifice this to God, if we still had an altar sacrifice. It's a good animal, it's my favorite piggy. And all the Jews would die. And then they would go, no, let's hold on a second. Let's talk about this a little bit here. No, and again, you come into, there's knowledge of him, and there are some things where you knew you were doing wrong. There's something inside of you which you knew, but there are also things that you needed to be shown. And that is a revelation thing. God is continually just trying to illuminate for you what was already said. Okay? And that fullness in that study is what we're getting into. Okay? There were many things where he would convict you afterwards and say, listen, when you started that was acceptable, I know you really didn't understand. Now, you've been walking with me a lot longer, I'm expecting more. And he will convict certain things, and we get this, right? For those of you who have been through a couple of annual services, there are things where he goes, yeah, okay. So you passed, basics, now you're on to intermediate. Intermediate has got 17 levels where basics at 4. Let's have that conversation. And it gets more fun because when he expects you to be at A level, he will push those buttons a little higher. And he says, right, you did it pretty well. And you made a lot of changes this year, but this is where I want you to work. And that continual relationship with him is not just knowing his Torah, but knowing him so well that I can tell the difference between when he's talking and when others are. If you come in here and you start preaching prosperity theology and you say God says he loves you and he wants the best for you and he's just going to give you just sow 100,000 and he's going to give you 17 million back. And then I'm going to be looking at you and I go, you don't know my God, thanks very much, you can leave now. Because I've read in the scriptures and he's shown me that stuff, that discipleship and walking through wilderness and moments he's going to push you in. It's not all just going to be rainbows and fluffy bunnies. You don't know him. But unfortunately, we have people that are cloaked in that stuff that preach it as if it's true. Different, right? So, the sins will no longer be there, their wickedness will no longer be remembered. This is what Adonai says, who gives the sun as a light for day and who ordained the laws for the moon and the stars. To provide light for the night, who stirs up the sea until the waves roar. Adonai Tzevaot is his name. If these laws leave my presence, says Adonai, then the offspring of Israel will stop being a nation in my presence forever. So, replacement theology much? You cannot undo creation, and he's not going to change his mind about the group of people that he's chosen. If you, like Ruth, have chosen to become part of that nation, you'll become part of that listing. Right? This is what Adonai says, if the sky above can be measured and the foundations of the earth be fathomed, then I will reject all the offsprings of Israel for all that they have done, says Adonai. So, even though they deserve it, he's not going to give rid of it. Look, the days are coming, says Adonai, when a city will be rebuilt for Adonai from the tower of Millennial to the corner gate. The measuring line will be stretched out to Garivil and to Goa, a whole valley of corpses and ashes, including all the fields as far as the Valley Kidron, and on all the corner to the horse gate to the east will be separated out for Adonai. It will never be uprooted or destroyed again.
Okay, that's
Okay? But you see there's part of this process coming in, but it's going to be fully established millennial, and then the actions. Okay, next one. I want you to go to Ezekiel. What's it, 20? Yeah, I want to say 36. Yeah, 36. 36. From 36. 36. Yeah, 36. Let's go from 22. Alright. Therefore, tell the house of Israel that Adonai Elohim says this: I'm not going to be doing this for your sake, house of Israel, but for the sake of my holy name. So something that is going to be instituted because of you, because you've chosen Christ, because you have established His holy name. No. You can be part of this and you're going to see something cool, but don't think that you're the one who got this right. Funny, that's not what's taught in church today. Which you have been profaning amongst the nations where you went. I will set apart my great name to be regarded as holy, since it has been profaned in the nations. You profaned it among them. The nations will know that I am Adonai, says Adonai Elohim, when before their eyes I will set apart through you, I am set apart through you to be regarded as holy. Again, holiness, clean, unclean. I have to make the distinction. He's made the distinction. A holy people cannot profane themselves. Something holy then becomes unclean. You with me? Okay, very basic illustration. This book, holy, clean, or unclean? Holy. Why? The Word of God. This is the very words of God. This is Yeshua in form, right? Holy, like He is holy, right? If I take this and I treat it as such, if I treat it as something clean, I would be able to tear out the pages. Oh. Holy, clean, unclean. Not unholy, not unclean. Just clean. It's just a book.
It's not pork.
It's not poo-poo. It's not pork. It's just a book. It's got some pages. I don't have no funny pictures. Blank pages, right? No funny pictures, no other winners. Right? This is a clean book. If I tear the page out of this one and do a doodle, no one has a heart attack. I do it out of this one, you all want to stone me. Why?
Because we like that.
We're a bunch of Jewish folk. You guys are confused. It's just paper. It's made out of the same thing.
No.
It is. Paper is paper. It's a tree,
It's
surely.
information on it.
It is what it is set apart, its purpose is. If this is to give me God in form, and this is for me to write down and do whatever I feel like, one is clean, common, and one is set apart. Right? Now, unclean. If I take a clean piece of paper and I dip it in Max's poo-poo, and then I want to draw pictures on it. Unclean or clean? Unclean is something that has defiled my clean thing. Same illustration. You all stone next. All of a sudden, you all want to get upset because I have profaned the holy.
Yes.
Now, if I take an unclean animal and I take pig's blood and I dip it on my holy book, abomination that causes desolation, the end is nigh. It's going to happen now. Alright? But I've got no problem saying, if I am part of this temple of God that's supposed to be holy, 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 if I'm supposed to house the Ruach HaKodesh and I eat unclean things, okay or not okay? Why? Because I'm defiling myself. I'm profaning the holy again. I am the thing that God has set apart for His purpose. I am the thing that's taken His word and written on my heart. I am the thing that is razim, that is holding the Ruach HaKodesh deep inside of me, and then I think I can use it to defile myself. Get out of jail free card, don't worry, you got grace. That is not what it's teaching. We cannot and we must not make a distinction, because even in the New Covenant Scriptures, he says, you have profaned it. You have profaned me. You have reflected me in a way that tells the people that I'm not clean. Isaiah 65:66, one of the two, check me. It talks about him coming down, striking the people dead with pork in their mouth. If he's coming down, that means millennial reign is starting. And if he's judging you then on what you knew, you understood the difference between unclean, clean, and holy. Someone explained it to you. And you still continue to do that. Now, we could take that and say it's a step further, because if he's eating pork, he's probably doing a host of other unclean things. He's gone back to the world. But if your dietary restrictions tells you, and this was a clincher for me, this was why I started eating kosher. About why do we do this? I sit down at a table and when someone says bacon, I say, no thanks, I don't eat pork. First normal question that popped into my mind was, are you Jewish? And I sat and I thought, if me saying no to pork tells you which God I serve, thanks very much. That is the essence of being kadosh. I'm running around with flappy tassels. For the world who doesn't understand this, they go, what gaan I nou met daai tosseltjies? Tosseltjies. Okay, we'll have this conversation. But to someone who recognizes the tosseltjies, I don't have to say a word. They know what I represent and they know how I should act. That man's wearing tzitzit. That means he's a sadiq. It was an awesome experience. I'm sure we shared it with you. We're walking up and down Yafo Street, which is one of the main streets in Ben Yehuda, in Jerusalem, and we're walking up and they've got these guys standing on corners. Come, have a drink, our pub's right here, have a blah, blah, blah. And we're trying to be polite and we're saying, no thanks, we're going down to the hotel. Sit down, relax, come. And out of the back there, from the pub, we hear another guy scream, Sadiq, Sadiq. A Sadiq is a righteous person. And then the guy looked down, he saw tzitzit and he shut his mouth. You're trying to peddle booze to the wrong group of people. Right?
Same thing happened to me where Michael was at a birthday party and I went to fetch him, but they were still playing, so I sat with everybody. And while sitting there, the host, or the lady's husband, kept trying to offer me alcohol. And I was like, oh, come on, drink, man. Eventually he opens a beer, he gives it to me, and I put it back down. He's like, no. And the night goes on, it's now late, and he goes inside. And Michael comes to me and says he needs the loo. So I quickly take him to the loo, and I walk past the guy. He sees my tzitzit. He went blood red. He's like, I'm so sorry. For the rest of the night, he apologizes to me. He said, I'm so sorry. I'm really so sorry. It's like, it's okay.
It was just, but they recognize it, right? That's what kadosh is. They recognize you for what you are and what you're standing for. And if you have taken God inside and out, and this is what's going to be what you live for every fiber of your being, don't think that you can give an ill reflection of what he says is okay and what's not. Don't get stuck into that game. This isn't a theological debate. If he says don't do it, he meant it. He doesn't change. We do theological jiu-jitsu. We take that verse and we plug it in here. We take that verse and we plug it in here. We take that verse and we plug it in here. And we make it mean something that it was never meant to be. That's very plain sense stuff. A kid can read that without any interpretation and say, but God said we're not allowed to. No, but it's not God, it's Moses. No, it's not Moses, it's a Jewish thing. It doesn't say that anyway. Where did you get that translation from? Moses' law. No, I'm pretty sure it says, and God said. It's God's law. Are you keeping God's law or you're not? And the New Covenant again talks about profaning his name. Profaning what he is. What he is.
Like Moses came up with it.
Oh yeah.
Then you may as well just say, well then Muhammad's law, why not?
Indeed. Alright. Verse 24. For I will take you from among the nations, gather you from all the countries, and return you to your own soil. 1948. And if we wanted to go a step further, Jerusalem came in 1967. Then I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your uncleanliness and from all your idols. Stop. He's still concerned about the clean and unclean. You're not just holy for the sake of holy. Be holy. It's an instruction. You have a choice. Right. Number one. Number two. This enters into the New Testament where? Give me a person's name.
John the Baptist.
Right. Okay?
No, sorry, John Leon.
No, you're right. John the Baptist. Yochanan is immersing for what reason? What was the mikvah used for before? Where did they get the idea?
Ritual cleansing, purified.
Where do we get that to?
Because when you go in the water, you come out.
Not temple.
Oh,
Before
we get
temple.
from, well, Moses, the Red Sea, from the Jordan.
Son. We see the images once we look back. But he said, wash your clothes, cleanse yourself, God is coming. Okay? Does God really wants me to be smelling fresh? So, cleansing. So before we come into God's presence, we mikvah. Before you go into synagogue, you mikvah. Before you go into temple, you mikvah. But that's about cleansing the outside, focusing on the inside, while doing the outside and coming into His presence and knowing He wants us to be clean. John the Baptist is out in the desert, in a river, and he's calling for a baptism of what? Not cleanliness. Where? No, that's cleansliness with hyssop. That's Pesach. Right? If you're going to make that illusion. No. So, okay, so if I want to clean you, I have to beat you with hyssop. Jolly good, thanks, Ronnie. I'll do that later. Right? We have a different image. Now he's calling people to Teshuvah. What's wrong with Teshuvah? He got it from this passage. I will gather you from among the nations. Who's he talking to? Who's among the nations? The diaspora, the Jews, the lost tribes are out there. Why have they been scattered?
Disobedience.
Their disobedience. They worshipped other gods, they didn't worry about clean and unclean, sacrificed children, did all the other things that the world said was fine. God smacked God for breaking covenant. What an interesting thing. And then they get scattered through all the nations. Don't worry, you're all the believers in Messiah. You're not going to get smacked if you do things that don't please Him. You've got grace. Yeah, then that's my point. Alright? If He lovingly beat the point to the fact that He kicked them out of their own land because He said, this is my land. He had to cleanse the land from their filth. And you have been brought into that same household. Don't think that you can bring in your chacha with, then you're going to stay there. He's going to get rid of you. Right. So He gathers them all in. Because of their disobedience, their time allotment, they're out. He's going to come back in. He's going to sprinkle us clean. And listen to the next thing. From all your idols, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit inside of you. I will take the stony heart out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit inside you and cause you to live by my laws, respect my rulings, and, oh, that's a big one, obey them, not excuse yourself from them. Okay? But this is the thing. John and them read these verses and they were like, Abba, how do we get that right? Well, he's really worried about water again. What do we need to do? Well, it was our idols that got us kicked out. So you bring back Teshuvah, you come and you sprinkle yourself again, and we ask God to bring this covenant and establish it here in our time. They were anticipating it, and who pitches up? The one who's going to establish it.
But where did John get the picture from? Repentance.
Yeah.
Repentance.
Yeah. I will cleanse you from your idols. So you have to say no to your idols and then you can come back into the land. Right? You have, because Torah was a stipulation for when you stayed here. God said, if you forget Torah, I will do what I did to the other nations. I'm going to throw you out. I'm going to go out of this land. This land is for people who will walk with me, worship my name and keep my statutes. If you don't, you stay there. You want foreign gods, you live with them. And that's where they were. And he says, come back. One God, one instruction, one land, come back. And he brings that in. And then he says, you see, the sign of this covenant is not Shabbat. Sinai's covenant was Shabbat. Your wedding band, your ketubah. It is the Ruach that is going to be inside you, your new heart, that is going to tell the difference between whether you want to serve him or not. Now, if sometimes you struggle, and you don't know where you are, and you don't know if you want this, go pray. You want the Ruach? You know how I know the difference between, okay, church teachers, if you don't talk in tongues, you haven't received the Holy Spirit. Let me not generalize. A lot of churches teach. The problem is, talking in tongues is a manifestation gift that comes and goes. So does that mean your salvation comes and goes? Well, we hope not. Right? Because if he can change his mind, then what was the point? Right? So, but he says to you, he says, I'm going to put my spirit inside you, and what is the big indicator?
Help you to walk right. So I'm keeping.
Keep his, obey his judgments.
Change. If you still sound the same, and listen to me carefully, God might give you a piece of the Spirit, and you might be changed for a moment, and you choose to ignore the voice. That doesn't mean you weren't saved. That means Israel is your name, eh? You want to struggle with God to the point where you would want to walk away. You want to push that 120 boundary. I'm going to do 140 because what's 20 k's between friends? There's grace. What's 3 hours of pension from Shabbat here? Big time. I will cause you. Now there, all of a sudden it happens. I'm speaking from my experience, and I've seen a lot of it in other guys. Is there's all of a sudden there's this deep heart's desire to want it, and you don't know why. I was giving Bibles away to people who didn't want Bibles. Why? Because if I didn't give them a Bible, it was coming. I have God, you need Him. I have Torah, you need Him. People that are standing in London streets all of a sudden turn around and go, you need God. What makes you do that? What makes you want to stand up and share and grab the person and pray for them and hug them and do this? Well, I have a fantastic idea. Let's give up 3 nights a week for my family so I can terrorize people about God. And I get excited about it. There's something wrong with you. Yeah. There is something wrong with me. Because all of a sudden I had a moment of clarity with Him. And if He demands my life, how can I give Him anything less? He gave me His. If that's what He's given me, how can I turn around and look Him in the face and say, no, I gave you the best 5% ever. When I said 5%, man, 15 minutes every morning, it was uninterrupted, eh? I even closed my door sometimes.
And Wednesdays is pool night.
I've got no problem, and listen, I catch myself doing this from time to time. No problem spending an hour and a half watching a movie. I have a big problem spending 20 minutes reading my Bible. Why is it that when we want to entertain ourselves with the things we want, that flesh? Why is it we find the time for the things we want to do, and we don't find the times for the things we need to do? Your relationship is a give and take scenario. You give, you're going to get. You take, it's going to die. You need to prioritize what's important. Eternal life, is it not important to you? Is your bacon sandwich more important? Is your Shabbat, well, I'm resting, but I'm not going to come to fellowship because, it's warm outside. I don't want to. We've been having my wife and I have been having a raging discussion about how far God is going to take that staple. Shabbat carried the death sentence. Adultery, kidnapping, murder. Sabbath. Now you go into covenant with Him knowing what that represents. Understanding Isaiah 58, understanding Isaiah 56, and you walk in and you go, yeah, no, I'm just going to do my 120. What excuse are you going to give Him if He's going to say, you had your salvation sitting there and you chose to play with it every time you came in because you didn't know which house you wanted to belong to? Death sentence. Is it an eternal thing? Question mark. Scriptures aren't clear. But if you put that breaking Shabbat as in the same bracket as kidnapping and murder, and all feasts and festivals have them, maybe you should take that a little bit more seriously. This covenant thing is relationship stuff. Again, we got far too much.
Do you perhaps know where in Scripture that is?
It's in Torah. Remember the guy who was carrying sticks and then they didn't know what to do with him and they got told him to take him and stone. It's in
Numbers
Exodus.
15.
Numbers.
Numbers 15. Yeah, Numbers 15.
Thank you. Yeah. Right? Now again, there's a whole bunch of things surrounding that, right? Understand that guy knew what Shabbat was. Understand it wasn't about the covering, it was probably about something else that he was going to do with that wood. But it's intentionally defying God.
I had a discussion like this on Tuesday, and I didn't know about the other three, so I'm going to continue that little discussion with somebody.
There's also somewhere, I can't think of where it is, but it talks about there is no sacrifice for those who basically choose to sin.
Romans.
So if you choose, knowing that Shabbat is a commandment, and breaking the law according to John 1 John chapter 3, says sin is lawlessness. So if you're knowing that keeping Shabbat, not keeping Shabbat is sin, then there is no longer a sacrifice for you. So people can't use this scapegoat. No, Jesus is He paid the price.
Well,
There is no longer a sacrifice for you because you willingly choose.
obviously there has to be, guys. Don't go condemning people who don't understand Shabbat, don't
And
understand
I'm
covenant
saying
and stuff like that. You need to be in covenant for this thing to take effect. There was one interesting, Rabbi Steve Bergson does that Messianic Torah observant Israel. Good, okay. He said, when he baptized people, he takes them to seven things. And he says one of the things that he tells them is, he said, once you're baptized and you understand the name of God, only now are you going to be held accountable and are you able to profane the very name of God. Because now you understand who He is and what He's supposed to do, what He's supposed to do. Other people throw it around frivolously, that's why you have to be careful what you reveal to whom. But you remember He judged the Pharisees harder than He judged the fishermen from Galilee. You lot know more. Excuses like that are going to be very weak. Okay? There is a portion for covering of intentional sin that comes out of Torah. It says, only God can. But the problem is, if you don't make teshuvah, you won't have the opportunity to. And you don't know when He's coming. How long do you want to push that speed limit? Okay. I will save you from all your uncleanliness. I will summon the grain and increase it and not send famine against you. I will multiply the yield of the fruit from the trees and increase production in the fields so that you never again suffer the reproach of famine among the nations. Then you will remember your evil ways and your actions that were not good. As you look at yourselves, you will loathe yourselves for your guilt and disgusting practices. Understand, says Adonai Elohim, that I'm not doing this for your sake. Instead, be ashamed and dismayed for your ways. house of Israel. And he goes on to talk about cleansing and talking about ruins being rebuilt and so on and so forth. Do we see that this is now talking about the time when he's really going to hold everybody accountable? Zechariah 14, you will come up to the nations. Me, I don't want to be in that group of nations that will not receive rain. I want my judgment to happen now. Yeshua has taken that, and I want to live and reign with him, but I need to understand Torah before I can reign and judge anything. That's the standard we're going to use. All right, covenant of new covenant. Yes. Understand? Sobering, yes? All right, very quickly. I want you to go Numbers 25. You want more coffee? Get the blanket, you know, staying at tonight. Yeah, okay. Parashat Pinchas. All right, 25. Okay. So when we talk about the covenant of peace, this is the first mention. Numbers 25. Okay, so remember there was the Balak and Balaam story, right? People want to go and worship in God's Mishkan. There's a lighty with a spear who gets a little bit grumpy, and he stabs someone through the abdomen area. Happy things stopped Kaputski. Why is that such a death sentence, and why is God so happy? How do these people worship? Right, that's optional. If I'm going in, you have a God, we have a God. How do you worship? We slaughter a lamb. How do you worship? Okay, let's go. Let's worship your God instead. This seems like more fun. Right? And it says in the portion, it says, Pinchas the son of Eleazar. Who's Eleazar? High priest. Who is the son of Aaron the Kohen, has deflected my anger from the people of Israel by being as zealous as I am, for that I didn't destroy them with my own zeal. Therefore say, I'm giving him a covenant of shalom, making a covenant with him and his descendants after him, that the office of Kohen will be theirs forever. This is because he was zealous on behalf of his God and made atonement for the people of Israel. Okay, goes a little bit further. He put to death the woman from Midian, was Zimri, son of Salu, the leader of one of the clans of the tribes of Shimon. The name of the woman of Midian was killed was Cosbi, the daughter of Tzur, who was the head of the people in one of the clans of Midian. So tribal leaders, if a tribal leader gets up and does something from another one, this is like a royalty thing, it's acceptable. How many other clans and tribes are going to go, gotcha?
Is this a link to the Davidic covenant as well?
No.
No.
This is talking about Kohen, not Judah.
But they both came to form with Messiah.
Well, that's not Davidic. That's something else. Okay. The Davidic covenant is a stem from a covenant of Judah, which we'll discuss. Okay. So, we have a covenant of peace given with Pinchas. Right. Because he was zealous, passionate, loved God, loved his ways, will not tolerate any nonsense. Now, before I go on, there's an interesting illusion. Because Eleazar is mentioned, I thought I would give this to you. There's another Eleazar in Scripture. He links to one of the patriarchs. Yeah? Abraham's chief servant. Right. I'll give it to one. So, Eleazar had an important task. What was his task? To find a bride for Yitzhak. Okay. Check this movie. Right. Abraham, the father, sends his trusted chief servant to go find the bride for the son. The one that was to be offered. What is the gift of the Spirit? Since we were there with covenant, new covenant.
The gift of the Spirit.
The gifts. What illusion do we have for it? Give me bridal custom and gifting, because we We know it was a marriage. Sinai covenant. Bride price. Okay? When the bride price happened, the father would take some of it and he would drill little holes in it and he would attach it to her veil.
Yes.
That would be her only possession, and that was that which covered her to walk in and present herself to her husband.
Good, the trust and certainty, we've got the Father and the Son,
Father,
but the Ruach is not.
we have Elohim, who takes some of the bride price. The bride price was
We the bride.
given by Yeshua, who waits for his bride, and who is the one that he said, I'm going to send you someone.
Yes, the Ruach, but he's not the servant.
The Ruach HaKodesh, it's an illustration of movie. And that Ruach HaKodesh, when he found her, he tested her, and what did he do? He praised God and he gave her gifts. He gave her jewelry. He adorned her as the bride. He prepared the bride. He gave her her veil, in a sense. Right, okay? So we almost see the triune being played out between the father, who goes and chooses, he says, gets to his trusted servant to go adorn her, and then the son sits. And notice what's important about, what was the lady's name? Rebecca. What did Rebecca do when she said, your husband's waiting?
She put on a veil.
No, but before she got there, she had to see him before she put on the veil. She left with him. She left with the servant to go to her husband. It's rapture. Right. Okay. So Rebecca left to go to her husband. It's funny that when you talk about the Ruach HaKodesh descending, the Shekhinah of God, the Shekhinah of God, when God came down, Sinai made what? It was the sound of a great shofar. Is this making sense, or is it just my madness? Right. Okay. As she started coming, as he came, all right, that Ruach HaKodesh made that noise. All right. So it's going to make another English just 1 Thessalonians. Yeah. Back to the covenant of peace. All right. Go to me to Isaiah 54.
This is the sword.
Yeah, right. So do my knowledge. Right. Isaiah 54. Sing, barren woman who has never had a child. Burst into song, shout for joy. You have never been in labor, for the deserted wife will have more children. Then the woman who is living with her husband says, Adonai, enlarge the space of your tent, extend the curtains of your dwelling, don't hold back, lengthen your cords, make your tent pegs firm. For you will spread out to the right and to the left, your descendants will possess the nations and inhabit the desolated cities. Don't be afraid, for you won't be ashamed. Don't be discouraged, you won't be disgraced. I want to remind you, that was the portion that God gave this fellowship. You will forget the shame of your youth, no longer remember the dishonor of being widowed, for your husband is your maker. Adonai Tzevot is his name, the Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. So he formed you, he will redeem you. He will be called God of all the earth, for Adonai has called you back, like a wife abandoned and grief-stricken. A wife married in her youth cannot be rejected, says your God. Briefly I abandoned you, but with great compassion I am taking you back. Sound familiar? Israel being redeemed again, not for her sake, but for his name. I was angry for a moment, and I hid my face from you, but with everlasting grace I will have compassion on you, says Adonai, your Redeemer. For me, this is like Noah's flood. Funny that that illustration is there when he says the end times will be like the times of Noah. Just as I swore that no flood like Noah's would ever again cover the earth, so now I swear that never again will I be angry with you or rebuke you. Is that now? No, I think he's still beating us senseless. For good reason. For the mountains may leave and the hills be removed, but my grace will never leave, and my covenant of peace will not be removed, says Adonai, who has compassion on you. Storm-ravaged city, unconsoled, I will set your stones in the finest way. Lay your foundations with sapphires. Make your windows shine like rubies, your gates as garnet, your walls like gemstones. All your children will be taught by Adonai. Your children will have great peace. Sound familiar?
Mhm.
Right, so when he is there. In righteousness you will be established, far from oppression, with nothing to fear, far from ruin, for it will not come near you. Any alliance that forms against you will not be my doing. So in a time when he's teaching you, when Jerusalem is laced with the most beautiful, finest gems, when God is there, there are still people that will come against you. Can only be millennial. Okay? Whoever tries to form such an alliance will fall because of you. It is I who created the craftsman who blows on the coals and forges weapons suited for their purpose. I also created a destroyer to wreak havoc. No weapon made will prevail against you. In court you will refute every accusation. The servants of Adonai inherit all this. The reward for their righteousness is from me, says Adonai. Okay. And then he goes, all who are thirsty, come to water. You without money, come and buy and eat. Just come, wine and milk. Again, that illustration of Shana Rabbi that we spoke about. Okay. Go quickly to Ezekiel 37. Yeah.
The veil.
Yes.
Link into the fruits.
Yes, the gifts of the Spirit.
Okay, it's the fruits of the
But
Spirit.
would link
The fruit is what's going to exude from it.
Sorry, but I don't see the connection between the covenant of peace in Numbers and the one in Isaiah, how the two actually link
Well, it
together.
actually says covenant. Yes.
But besides it saying that,
Well, then
What
if it's
is
a
it?
covenant of peace, well, that's where we're going to get the full picture. There's another portion that we're going to talk about it, right?
okay, I'm not getting it yet.
Yeah, that's weird, right? Because it's
Particular
like,
one, I don't get it yet.
Pinchas, zealous, and then he talks about righteousness
I
and
don't
redeeming.
see the link yet.
So we've got two pictures, right? Okay. No, let me do the share. So we've got Numbers 25, and again, this is like millennial reign. It's giving you pieces of the puzzle. Okay.
This is not part of the covenant piece, eh? That's other thing you wrote.
No, that's just, yeah,
It's
something.
extra. Something.
Yeah, extra fun. I saw Eliezer, and there it was.
I'll never read the Torah says again.
Numbers 25 talks about a priest or a kohen. More specifically, remember we have to make the distinction. A kohen and zealousness. Right? Being a priest forever, right?
See now, I want to throw another thing in there.
Right, just hang on. Isaiah 54 talks about redeeming, to gather back to the Father, and righteousness. But mainly us forgetting the shame of our youth, and he will establish that same type of covenant. And it talks about him being established through a lineage. This one is going to be the people of Israel, who have left him and now being redeemed, are going to be established at his feet. Okay, both established with him and through him. Okay, those are the two pieces so far. Okay, third place. Okay, Ezekiel 37.
Yeah.
Okay. With the hand of Adonai upon me, Adonai carried me out by his spirit and set me down in the middle of the valley, and it was full of bones. Okay. So we know the story about the valley of dry bones, right? Summary: what happens?
Falls out the job
Son of man can eat buns it again.
Okay? Something that was dead comes together again, gets muscle, gets sinew, gets breath.
For example.
Okay? Yeah, zombies are back. Alright? Jump down to verse 10. It says, I prophesied as ordered, and the breath came into them, and they were alive. They stood up on their feet, a huge army. Then he said to them, human being, these bones are the whole house of Israel. And they are saying, our bones have dried up and our hope is gone. We are completely cut off. Right? So their problem is, a nation has died. This is a possibility that when they were exiled completely, Palestine came in, we're never going to go home. That changed, 1948. Okay. Now all of a sudden, God has not forgotten us.
They did go back, though.
Not as a nation. You could have stayed in Palestine, but it wasn't Israel. It wasn't your land. Okay? That was for someone else. That was under Ottoman control and Arab control, and then eventually...
the Persians
control.
didn't allow them to go back.
yeah, but even then, you were not Persian. So it wasn't your land. It wasn't your inheritance like God had said.
So it was under Persian rule, they just were allowed to go back.
Same as with British mandate. When Allenby came in and instituted, he said to them, you can do whatever you like, but you're not allowed to do this, and this. So only once it was fully given in even 1948, had that stipulation. Okay? They have not yet been, well, my opinion, to become fully established you need Jerusalem, so it was a stepping stone, but then came in 1967. And then they took more land, and then they took the Golan, and those are areas that were actually given to them, okay? So, my people, I will open the graves and make you get up out of your graves, and I will bring you into the land of Israel. A dead nation has been revived. A dead language had been revived. This is the only case of an ancient dead language actually coming back into being, Hebrew. That does not happen willy-nilly. It had to be ordained by God. One guy decided he wasn't going to speak anything else except Hebrew, and he taught everybody else to do so. He developed the language from the Bible. That's why you can't swear here. Because everything is biblically based. The new stuff, we had to make up. Okay? Vitamin in Hebrew? Vitamin. Yeah. Radio? Radio. Okay? Those are not biblical, yeah, pizza. There's not biblical words. But when we understand lechem, when we understand bet, when we understand kala, the bride, when we understand those things, those are the things we took, because this is a language we've been talking, even though biblically, only when we read our Bible, only when we read Torah. Okay? Then you will know that I am Adonai, when I have opened your graves and made you get up out of your graves, my people. I will put my spirit in you. Sound familiar? Paralleling here this covenant, the peace with the new covenant. And you will be alive. Then I will place you in your own land, and you will know that I am Adonai, I have spoken, and that I have done it, says Adonai. The word of Adonai came to me, you human being, take one stick, write on it, for Judah, and for those joined with him among the people of Israel. Next, take another stick and write for Yosef, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel who are joined with him. 2 sticks, 1 stick, Judah. Other one, Israel or Ephraim. Why do they use that?
Because the kingship was placed in Ephraim, so
Became the capital of the northern tribes. Ephraim is where they settled it, so it became a synonym, and it drives you crazy in Isaiah, and he goes, and Ephraim, and he's not talking about Ephraim, he's actually talking about Israel. Okay, so he's using it, but he also says, and those who have joined it. Interesting. Who is joining the household of Judah, and who is joining the house of? The only picture we have of that again is Sinai. Finally, bring them together into a single stick so that they become one in your hand. When your people ask you what this means, tell them that Adonai Elohim says this: I will take the stick of Yosef, which is in the hand of Ephraim, together with the tribes of Israel who are joined with him, and put them together with the stick of Judah and make them a single stick, so that they become one in my hand. These sticks on which you write are to be in your hand as they watch. Then say to him, that Adonai Elohim says. Let me just pause there. This nation was split before, and there was one king who united them. David. David is a synonym used throughout Scripture in many places as for Mashiach. Right, the beloved. Okay? David be dead a long time when they reference David will rule them. David's not coming back. Right? But the beloved will rule them. Alright? So, David was elected by Judah. And he was established in which town first? Hebron. Why Hebron? The patriarchs, the originators of the covenants. On the foundation. He was there for 7 years, and then the other nations came up to him and said, come and rule. 33 years he ruled with them. But they came and they wanted him to be king over them. What does Yeshua say? What about Baruch haba b'shem Alman? I will not drink of this until you call. Until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. I recognize you as who you are. Why do I use that as a phrase for? Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Uses wedding talk. When I recognize him as my groom, I will call on him so he will come. You have to understand his identity. You have to understand who he is. Okay? I will take the people of Israel from among the nations where they have gone and gather them from every side and bring them back to their own land. This is part of redemption. I will make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Israel, and one king will be king for all them. There will no longer be two nations, and they will never again be divided into two kingdoms. Your two-house theology of the olive trees of the wild and the cultivated doesn't stand up to this. It says one king, one nation, no division. Sounds like Sinai. They will never again defile themselves with idols, their detestable things, or any of their transgressions. But I will save them from all the places where they have been living and sinning, and I will cleanse them, so that they will be my people, and I will be their God. My servant David will be king over them, Yeshua. And all of them will have one shepherd. They will live by my rulings and keep and observe my regulations. They will live in the land I gave to Yaakov, my servant. Physical land, physical inheritance, physical redemption. Where your ancestors lived, they will live there. They, their children, and their grandchildren forever. And David, my servant, will be their leader forever. Is David going to live forever? I think not.
Why not?
Well, not yet. Not yet. Maybe he'll be there chilling with us. I will make a covenant of peace with them, an everlasting covenant I will give to them, increase their numbers, and set my sanctuary among them forever. My home will be with them. I will be their God, and they will be my people. The nations will know that I am Adonai, who sets Israel apart as holy, when my sanctuary is with them forever. Millennial and established forever. The start of which happens there. So, what did you get all the way out from Ezekiel? A whole bunch of forevers. So, a nation gets born, they get hope, they become one, they have one king, they are one nation, and it is established again with him and through him. Are you guys following?
Yes.
Okay. So he's giving us three big pieces of this idea. But to get this, you have a Kohen who was zealous for God, who wasn't afraid to stand up and take hold of these things. You have Isaiah talking about the divorced bride whose shame will be forgotten and she will come back in. And those will be, well, she will be brought in and she won't ever be again. She's going to be established in righteousness. And then we have a nation who has lost all hope and who's ever joined to that nation will come up with them. And then we have Isaiah 56, who talks about the Gentiles who keep my covenants will be coming up to Jerusalem. Why? Because you have taken on the yoke of the king and it's good to you. Because you want it. Because you desire it. What makes you give up your free time? What makes you give up your dietary choices? What makes you do any of this? Because there's been a change of heart. And that change of heart is established because you understand Yeshua died for you. You understand that you wanted that so much that you got chose to be mikvah, that you made true teshuvah. Listen to me. If you have been baptized and you have not taken acknowledgement of all the nonsense you did, fix up. There is only true teshuvah when you acknowledge you were wrong. That's why you didn't want to do the things you did. But now you're sitting in a space where you knew how wrong you were and you can at least praise God for taking you out of those situations. Don't justify that while we were young we did what we wanted to. That doesn't cut it. For God's sacrifice to take shape, they would confess their sins and say, I did that that was me. And He was going to bring you in with a hope. What does Paul talk about? I have this hope. He's going to come. And He's going to rule, and He's going to reign. Death is gone, sickness is gone. Guys, this could very well be the worst it's ever going to be. You're surviving. Is it easy? No. But don't worry, there's a promise it's going to get a lot better. Remember the promise? No eye has seen, no ear has heard the good things that I've planned for you. He's not talking about your life just chilling here. He's talking about what's to come. The grandeur and splendor of this kingdom, and He's got a place for you if you want it. And this shalom that He talks about, this fullness of His peace, never leaves. Because you were zealous for me. Because even though you did wrong, I told you I loved you and I'm going to bring you back. And I'm going to bring you to me. And I'm going to establish this because He loves you. One king, one nation. One ruling. He brings us back full circle to what Sinai should have been.
I find the covenant of peace difficult to understand because it doesn't fit into the sequence of the other covenants in terms of the timeline. It's kind of all over the show.
It's the same as the new covenant. Think about it.
When
was the Ruach HaKodesh given? 2,000 years ago. But He said we will all know Him.
But aren't these two, they're sort of running parallel to each other?
They are. But it's sort of like one will get you here. The next will get you here. This is what we're going to see with the covenants. It says in Galatians that not one, just a new covenant does not nullify the promises of old. Galatians 3:13. So basically what I want you to see is the only reason we're here is because there was a crazy Gentile woman called Abe, and he said, enough of these idols, I'm out of here. And his son decided that was a good idea too, he's going to follow in daddy's footsteps. And then Yaakov decided, you know what, this is going to be tough, but if you look after me, I'll also take the plunge. And then his sons, whether they liked it or not, will all of a sudden put on a roller coaster ride because of what God promised Abraham. The reason they got to Sinai was because of that man. The reason there's a kingship in the house of Judah was because Judah received a blessing from that man. The scepter will not pass from you, O Judah. David goes, who am I that I should have this and I should sort out your house and all the rest of it? The only reason Solomon got the opportunity to even build a house is because of David. And so we go on. You have these things layer upon layer, renewed, runs into peace. And because we have seen the Ruach HaKodesh, we have experienced Him in many ways, we're starting to know God, we're starting to want Him to obey His word. But the simple fact of the matter is the fullness of the new covenant, or this renewed covenant, has not yet come in. Only much later will. But then when you look at the covenant of peace, it alludes to something here. But it goes on for eternity. It's sort of like the Sinai covenant links up with the renewed covenant, which links up to the peace covenant, which is going to be...
Yeah, that's kind of what I put the arrows I'm kind of making in my head here.
They overlap each other. So you would put Sinai, and then you would put, this is without, we'll go into a little bit more detail, we put in the renewed, and we only get the benefit of that when we understand the fullness of the peace. You've got to have the Ruach to make you want to stay with Him with one king and one
Because
nation.
though the peace covenant speaks of both in its entirety.
It's the same way as the law was given at Sinai and reiterated here, it's the same thing. And it's the same again of Abraham and Isaac's covenant are the same thing. So which one are you talking about?
It's all one thing, really. Yeah.
One God, He doesn't change.
Yeah.
He's just going, who wants to walk with me? And you get the opportunity to do so. The covenant of peace to me, my 2 cents, is the next stage from the renewal. The covenant of peace, that's the next stage, is on top of the renewal. So that's going to be the final overlapping thing because, again, zealous forever, righteousness forever, people forever, one king, one nation forever. Forever is done after death is done away with, after millennial reign.
After the renewed covenant is finished.
It's almost like an addendum to the new covenant that makes it better.
The same way that the renewed is the addendum to Sinai.
Although it's part of the renewed covenant because you can't have the renewed covenant fully
And this is
function without that covenant
yeah.
fully.
And this is what I love about people who go, we're new covenant believers, but you can't have the new without the old. You can't stand on the foundations of we have a king from the tribe of Judah without understanding you come from the tribes of Israel. It's just ridiculous. Yes, we have a sacrifice for sin. Yeah, is you sure? Do you still sin now? So does that offering go away? No. Do you need His blood now? Did you sin like 5 minutes ago, half an hour ago, 2 days ago? Yes. So the blood is still covering you, right? So that means it's still in effect. He hasn't done away with any sacrificial system. He's still there covering you. You don't have to sacrifice Him again because His blood is eternal. But you can't take away the sacrificial system without taking away the sacrifice. It makes no sense, man. So you cannot, in essence, when we start breaking our covenant, you can't rip these apart and say they're separate things. That's a theological debate. You can't. It's impossible. But what you can do is understand that God has made promises and He's going, do you see the hamsters going here? Look at the picture, look at the picture, look at the picture. There, that's where we're going. Can you please walk towards the end of the wall? And then maybe we could go, ooh, I want that. Maybe that's the end goal. When we finally see the pretty horsey at the end of it, woohoo, I'm coming. But they take steps to get there.
No, I don't want the ladder step, I just want the top piece.
Yeah, no, this is something that I feel very strongly about.